Hello and welcome back to Crew Parley. This is the reverse version of the normal Q&A thing we do in this channel. Normally people submit questions for me to respond to. This time it's me proposing the prompt and you all responding. So my prompt was about what I called mundane technology. I'm not sure that was a good name for that, but that's what I called it. I said, do you have any little improvements you've made in your day-to-day life that you especially like, or simple things that you get that add a lot of utility? These might be things like layering socks on socks to adjust how warm your feet are, or be warmer in just socks. I have cold feet, okay. A chalkboard on your desk to keep some key ideas in the front of your mind. This isn't actually the one I use for that. These are for the stream. I know it's reversed. Or a specific ingredient around the kitchen that's surprisingly widely useful. Or something. Fire away. And we got a total of 2 responses, but the first one, well, let's take a look. So that's what this is going to be. Because there weren't that many responses, I will add a lot of my own as well, but that's fine. I mean, what we got was good. It's no problem if lots of people don't respond, just that lots of people can. People supporting at the $5 tier on Twitch, for example, if you're a Twitch Prime sub, you can respond to these for free. So if you want to, I just want you to know that you can. True Parlay Grandmaster Fruit kicks us off. This is going to sound very privileged, but stopping to buy budget or mid-range stuff for everything. I do not advocate to never buy budget stuff. Last year, I sat down and thought about the objects I use most in my day-to-day life, what I need those things to do for me, and how much spending more money on them would improve my day-to-day life, trying to find the balance of quality of life and diminishing returns. And I did go out of my way to spend more money on a select few items while doubling down on the budget options for the rest of it all. It turned out not to be that much more expensive of a lifestyle while greatly improving my quality of life. Right, so the thing being proposed here is, I don't think that's privileged, is just to spend your money in a way that is not like a one system all the time. You know, don't get the cheap version every time, get the version that makes sense for each individual object. Now, frustratingly, for people that do not have a lot of time and money, wow, I wonder if anyone can relate to that, it's not the same for every kind of thing, exactly. There are plenty of items where the cheap version kind of shouldn't exist, but is there to take advantage of people that don't know, and also plenty of objects where the expensive version doesn't really have a clear purpose, or, you know, wouldn't benefit most people. And so someone thinking, oh, I could get more value by going for the more expensive one, well, in some cases, often no, it's not really meaningfully better, or it's even literally worse. You pay for a brand or something. There are plenty of times where advice either way is wrong for some things. You know, you can't just rely on the brand. Often the brand is what makes it more expensive and worse. But then for other things, the brand is what makes it not cheap and bad. And so you do want to get the branded one, you know, just as an example. I'm performatively trying to relate to the idea that this is overwhelming. Honestly, this type of thing is well in my wheelhouse, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this. So I was delighted to see someone else bring it up. You've got some examples for us, so let's go into those before I talk about it anymore. For example, Mr. Fruit continues, I do 80% of my work on my laptop. It has to be a laptop because it needs to be portable. Back in the day, I always bought mid-range laptops in fear of overspending, but last year I decided to spend twice as much money as before on what I consider a nice laptop. I could have spent 3 times as much to reach the high end of what is available, but that's where diminishing returns for me would start to become really noticeable. Another random example is switching from standard HB pencils to soft 3B pencils, okay? I'm old school and still use pencil on paper notes for many things, okay, nothing wrong with that. 3Bs don't last as long as HBs, and they're slightly more expensive because they're less common, but they create darker lines, which increases the contrast in my notes and makes them more readable for much, much longer. Best choice I could have made, saves me so many headaches. Right, so another thing is they often sound really minor, definitely something that I run into a lot with this type of recommendation, is that people will often say at a certain point of like mundanity, the thing just doesn't matter that much. I called it mundane technology, partly for that reason. People just don't agree that it does anything, basically, when in fact, I think those are basically the best ones to do. because you can do so many little upgrades for an almost unnoticeable increase in price. Whereas some of the things that I think are worth upgrading, like the laptop one you suggested, I think that's a great example. The lag, the reduction in lag, it really adds up over time. Now, I've often mentioned a better coffee grinder. My partner and I both split when we've moved in together. And it's better at grinding coffee more regularly, and that does increase the clarity of flavor. But we have the old grinder, and I've compared side by side, and it's not a huge difference. You know, like for some coffees, maybe. It's not the point. One of the other things it does that's better is it sounds less ugh, and it has an auto off as well. So you can just pour your beans in and hit the button to grind, and then just leave. That part is just done. It will stop on its own. If I could get my microwave to stop beeping when it's done and my kettle stops on its own, you just have to set it and then you can forget it. And you can so easily streamline your, process of, making a latte or whatever you do in the morning. I don't make coffee every morning, but my partner does. Having it auto off, like that adds up. You know what I mean? It's a little ridiculous to say, oh, that's worth the money. But looking at it another way, okay, it is worth some amount of money, though. If that were $5 more, that's clearly worth the money. If that were, $20 more, I think that's pretty clearly worth the money. You see what I'm trying to say? And so I think for some people, the big ones, it seems like, oh, well, it's a big thing, so getting a significantly better one makes more sense, which is weird, because obviously the bigger upfront cost is a bigger problem for most people. Whereas on the other hand, I've counterintuitively gotten a lot of resistance from people when I suggest like a small upgrade. When I suggest that I did one and it's good, they'll say that just doesn't matter. Or if I suggest one to them, they say, but I don't care enough, It's like, okay, but it costs essentially nothing and you get such a big upgrade. For me, the recent one has been that, I have a diagnosed handwriting disorder. And I would report to you that I have a lot of difficulty handwriting. It feels very manual, or like I'm wading through mud, is I guess the best way I can describe it. My brain gets a little foggy. Normally, I think it's fair to say I'm fairly quick-witted, and that kind of gets messed up somehow. I know that doesn't really make sense, but that's how it feels. It feels very bad to handwrite things for me, which is weird because I'm usually a very readily spoken person and I type really fast. It's not like thinking of the ideas that is the problem. I would hope kind of obviously, considering I do this channel for a living with no prep. There's something wrong with my brain's ability to turn words I'm thinking in my head into pen strokes, I guess. I don't know. So I have kind of neglected writing things down a little bit. When I was younger, I dropped my example, so you'll have to excuse me for a moment. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time handwriting anyway for what I would describe as romanticism. I was writing poetry and I felt like it needed to be written down. And I think there are a lot of interesting discussions to be had about like whether or how you do that. I had this English teacher turned close friend even now, and he writes his manuscripts for his novels on a typewriter. And that has a lot of interesting consequences. Like that, it was really interesting. He brought some for me to edit one time, and I went, like this is a surprisingly good idea in some unintuitive ways, and a very bad idea in some very obvious ways. Anyway, I've neglected writing things down, right? And so when my partner, who doesn't neglect writing things down and on physical paper, suggested these pens, I thought, well, what makes it a good pen? And she said, well, the size, I want the 0.5, you probably can't see that, but on there at the tip, it says 0.5. I guess that's the size in millimeters, maybe, of the ball. So that's how big of a line it makes, I guess. I don't know. I know almost nothing about pens. And then she said the ink dries faster. And so I decided to get some with her. I got her some as a small gift, and I just ordered some for myself. And just having those, specifically for me, I'll talk about something later, which is where I use a pen, where I write stuff down, because I rarely do. I use this one. This is the same thing, same ink, same size rollerball, but it's just smaller, and it's in this form factor instead. Makes a huge difference, and like, it's only like 5 cents more. Like there is no difference in cost that matters between the two things. So why not get the one that's like just right? Or these pens are like in the area of $1 each, which some people might think is a little expensive. I guess it depends how much you use pens. But you see what I mean? I don't feel like that really, people really scruple for that kind of change, has been my experience. But I completely get it, Mr. Food. I mean, I don't completely get it as far as the pencil thing, but I get the value of the small example. I think it's good that you gave a small example as well. I feel like these are where you can get a pretty massive quality of life improvement by just taking $10 and getting, like, you know, the gap between a stove and the counter around it, and then food falls in. For like $1, you can get a 3D printed or, you know, extruded rubber, you know, thing that blocks that gap. Massively simplifies cleaning up your stove. And again, the cost is like almost non-existent. Like, there's not really a reason. Buildings shouldn't even not have these. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, it's so little of a cost. It's kind of confusing why you don't already have them. Not even, you don't even need to get them. They would just be there. Stuff like that. And we could go through, and maybe I will, a bunch of things like that where the cost is just so low to get into it that I'm not sure there's a reason not to do that. But I find that people are often resistant to that kind of thing. I want to suggest, as a kind of thesis for this topic, that a lot of people have this fear that if they start upgrading things like that, it won't stop. I have two things to say for now. The first one is, I think for a lot of people, it's actually just that they want to shop, period, to relieve stress. And they know that about themselves, so they're trying to avoid like mundane shopping. But it doesn't have anything to do with the small thing they would buy. It's that they're worried about runaway, like generally irresponsible shopping. That's fine. You know, if you know your needs, that's okay. But that's not a criticism of this idea of upgrading the small things. If you can't do it for another reason, that's your like, fine. That's good that you know that, but that doesn't, it's still a good idea or that until proven a bad idea. And also another concern I've seen is that people will say, oh, well, you're never going to stop upgrading the things. You know, you would always have things to upgrade. This is weird, but a place that I've heard that argument come up a lot is in like Magic the Gathering, as an example, or trading card games. You play a tutor, a card that lets you search your deck for a certain card and then, you know, put it in your hand to play it. These are obviously very powerful in a lot of these games. And people will say, oh, if you want to not get the powerful card every time, you have to take the tutor out. Because if you take out the powerful card, you'll just get the next most powerful card. And it will just keep going forever. I know that doesn't seem similar. The reason I think it's similar is that both of those complaints don't actually line up with real life. If you actually try doing these things, you will find that that is not the case. To be fair, it sounds time-consuming to do these things in practice, but with a deck, it's not. So let's just try it. Take a deck that has tutors in it, think about what card you'd want to tutor for, and then remove that card. There may indeed be a second obvious card that you now want to tutor for. And I think a lot of people seeing that then go, see, there's no end to it, so there's no point in removing the stronger cards. No, you only did like one step. Keep going for 2 seconds. Give it a chance. And then I think you will find that for many decks, no, if you remove 1 or 2 cards, outliers, indeed, there is a wide variety of stuff you'd want to search for. And the same thing with these little improvements. You'll run out quicker than you'd think, and you'll have to keep an eye out for little things like this. If you keep it honest and say, you know, only a budget of $10 a month at the most to improve little things. There's a $50 thing, I gotta save up, you know, something like that. You will find that there is a limited number of things to upgrade. If you don't out of control shop for them and you only think about things that come up often, I do a rule of 3. If the thing comes up in my list, I note it down and say, oh, I think I want something to fix this problem. And then it's got to come up 3 times. And then if I keep going back to it, I go, okay, that is useful. That's not an impulse purchase. Let's get that. And to my credit, it's been very, very good. You know, as my partner will attest, she rose this concern early on, and I said, I think it's good that you're worried about that, so let's keep an eye on it. I implemented these systems, and now we have tons of nice little quality of life things all over the apartment, and it's amazing. So I would hate for someone to not do that because they fear the truth of the matter if you were to try and find out. Like, you can just try it, and it's okay. Again, if you don't feel that way about the little improvements, there are other places in life where that mindset takes root. So I know that's weird. Mr. Food then perfectly segues back in. So yeah, less of one thing and more of a mindset, indeed. Think about the truly important items in your life and spend your budget on those instead of spreading it evenly. It sounds simple and almost duh, but ever since I started to actively think about what daily items to invest money into, I began noticing how little the average person thinks about these things. Hope that still fits the spirit of this parlay. It does, absolutely. I mean, you could even pass it on to things like, here's an example. My partner often gets frustrated by when we're at the grocery store. You know, you can buy the organic version of a food, and she often gets a bit frustrated by like you can't really know what you're buying without doing a major research project, right? And I've said things like, okay, but we don't know, but there is under the surface like something there. There is something to know. We just don't know what it is. So, for example, like potatoes are often said to be like a risky thing to eat if they're not organic because they absorb so much of the surrounding soil. By the way, this is not really advice. I don't really know if that's true. I'm just giving you an example. That sounds sensible. I don't know, but I would want to look into it more before using that advice. So the idea goes, the thing is a lot of water. It's a tuber that sits in the soil, soaking up all the crap in the soil. Maybe it's not good for that to be like with pesticides because you probably can't just wash them off. They would absorb into the potato. So the logic goes. Again, I don't know if that's true. It doesn't matter. It's just an example. I would want to look into that. You get the idea. Another example would be just like when you buy a piece of fruit or a vegetable or tea, rinsing it off can make a significant difference sometimes. Sometimes there's literally just a preservative or pesticide that isn't that good for you if you eat it, but like sprayed on it and it's fine. You just have to wash it off. And so, yeah, it might not be organic, but do you need to avoid using the pesticide really? And that's a complicated question. I'm not trying to be facetious, but it's a complicated question much of the time. Eggs. I would say that's one of the ones that's the most convinced. I don't know why I'm on food, but there you go. During the egg shortage from the tariff situation and the it's not because of the tariffs really, the bird flu. Well, I'm sure it's not unrelated to anyway, whatever. My store did not have any eggs that were not these blue eggs. They called them True Blues. And I've had eggs that have a blue shell. That's just an heirloom kind of chicken or something. So we just got them because they were there. And if you haven't had these before, they have, at least this kind, has these incredibly beautiful, rich colored yolks. And they have like a little bit more of a, I don't know how to describe, I guess, like eggy flavor, but like not sulfur exactly, which is kind of the egg flavor smell. It's more like savory, I guess, like umami flavor. There is a richness to them that is, is it worth the money? That's a hard question. They're significantly more expensive than normal eggs. To give you an idea, these are like maybe 60 cents each at my grocery store, so significantly more expensive than some other eggs you can buy. But I mean, they're significantly better for you, as far as I can tell, and they taste better in amount I notice. So and that's not that expensive per egg. Like 60 cents an egg is not, if you just forget about whatever price you pay for eggs. In the grand scheme of things, for food, I don't think that's that expensive, personally. So there's that as well. I think the resetting of perspective a little bit can be useful. If you expect to be able to buy a shirt for $10, and so a $30 shirt seems expensive, it's like, okay, but should you be able to buy a shirt for $10? And I mean, what do you get for the $30 shirt? I think the problem is that a lot of the benefits of these kinds of things can be difficult to appreciate from the perspective of not having owned one. Like, it's very difficult to demonstrate the benefit, but it is there a lot of the time. Better quality clothes, for example, or something I've gotten into a lot recently in the past few months is like looking what fabric the clothing is made of, or like how the clothing is made, because I've realized that it makes a pretty significant difference to my enjoyment of the piece of clothing, but I just didn't notice until recently. One example is I got these really nice, cool, airy, nice thin fabric, but still soft, like button-down shirts, kind of button-down t-shirt, like short sleeve shirt, that would be really comfortable in the summer, and you could get a bit more of a crisp look. You want to be a little bit fancy, but it's like 90 degrees, and I overheat easily, and so I want a shirt like that. So I got them, but when you wash them, if you just wash them normally with the rest of your laundry, the this is hard to describe. I wish I could show you. Too bad. The buttons. You're imagining a button-down shirt. The lapel thing or whatever it's called with the buttons. It's probably not called a lapel. The thing in the center with the buttons. The a quality of the fabric means that it creases along where the buttons are. So this garment cannot ever be worn without it looking silly unless you iron it every time. But just for that one thing. Why would you construct a garment this way? Now, there probably is a complicated, like, textile reason why, but it's not worth it. I have garments that do not do that, that are just as comfortable, that, were less expensive, that are, 100% cotton or whatever. They're not like a fabric that is bad for me in exchange for being less expensive, that are nicely made. There isn't any advantage to this shirt, but I don't know what about that shirt made it do that. So I can't avoid it in the future because I don't know what happened. It kind of looks to me like something in the weave or the construction of the fabric. This doesn't matter. I'm just demonstrating. To find that out is a significant project. I think the undoing of this technique is that it's very, very easy to, you can just answer the question, and it's not really hard to answer the question about, like, what is the good one to buy? What is the good breakpoint? If you do a lot of research. But if you do a lot of research, you can't apply this to everything, which I think is beneficial. So to me, the trick is to find a midpoint where you can learn enough about the thing to make an educated guess about what would be a good breakpoint, but then have the restraint to go learn that about something else instead of going deeper on this subject, unless you think it's worth it, of course. For clothing, for example, I'm beginning to be frustrated enough that I'm edging toward modifying the clothes myself. I think I would wear those shirts. I mean, I own them now. I think I would wear those shirts if I just removed the part with the button and I could wear it as a layer, I think I might just cut that off, but I don't know how to cut that off. I think it's worth me learning how to cut that off so the shirt doesn't fray or something. Maybe it won't, but to learn about that. There's enough times that's come up that I don't think I cannot learn that and do the thing. But there are plenty of other fields, like tequila was one that came up on the Tea Time streams, where, I don't know, I'm pretty convinced that the good break point for tequila is 100% agave, the cheapest one. The cheapest one that is 100% agave is the best flavor for money. That's not that expensive. Where I live, that's like $20 for a bottle of tequila. And the ones that are not 100% agave, I don't think taste like tequila. So they're like fine, but one could buy vodka. And the flavor might be more neutral and therefore more flexible, more infusible. When we did that comparison, iPatch Notes, no offense, you recommended the tortilla tequila, a lower priced, but also not 100% agave tequila. It's not 100% tequila. It wasn't like disgusting or anything, but it just didn't significantly taste like tequila. I just think it isn't worth not buying vodka instead. That was my takeaway. Or like there are some rums around that price point that are all rum that taste kind of rummy. I don't know, sugar caney. They're a pretty neutral rum, sure. But like I've bought a bottle of rum that was like $12 that was okay. It wasn't amazing, but it was all right. I think I would rather have that most of the time. I'm sure were I to go more into it, I would find, there's cooked versus raw agave tequilas is the thing I don't totally understand, or they're like reaching for that flavor of the tequila. I don't totally get that. Reposado and añejo tequila, which are aged / smoked, and then the whole category of mezcal, which doesn't need to be made in Jalisco, Mexico. So there's a wider variety of types of agave. It doesn't need to be made of blue agave, I think. And so that's a wide category. Mezcal is known for being smoky, but it's actually just like most tequila, kind of, except this specific style that is made in Jalisco, Mexico, that's very popular, which we call tequila. And that's probably as deep as it's worth going for me personally. I don't drink that much tequila. But you get the point. You could go into these things in this way. I think we'll come back to this more, but I think the main takeaways for me are not going too deep into each subject, like going deep enough to figure it out, and considering that you might save money by spending more money, But there's also the specter of people, some people kind of want to spend more money. So that's one would have to undo that. I'm not sure I have advice for such a thing. I'm allergic to spending money. I mean, I will when it makes sense, if I feel like the benefit is there. But I think if you look into it and you have a specific benefit in mind that you want, and you're being honest with yourself about that, it's not just you like how it looks. That's not really worth $100 more, but you just really like how you would like your life if you had this thing. It's like, I don't know if that's worth it. Like maybe it's worth it to some people. Another thing I wanted to add is like renting versus buying. You know, I buy Xbox Game Pass, but I think most people probably it doesn't make sense to do that. And the reason is that in the very long run, I think you probably don't get $12 worth of game out of it. You know, if you don't try a new significantly priced game every month and like that game and continue playing it, and then if you would have played the game later, like 5 years from then, games do rotate off of Xbox Game Pass, so you don't own them forever. You're kind of renting them. It enters the territory of it's expensive to be poor, which is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it's stupid. Things like overdraft fees, often called a tax on being poor. You don't have enough money in your account, probably due to having a normal person amount of money, and you shuffle it around because you're being conscious of your expenses, will get you charged. You have to pay more because you have like enough money, but just less money. I know why, but that's not a good thing to have exist. That's all I'm trying to say. That if we could find a way out of that, that would be very good. And this is kind of a similar thing where it can be expensive to buy the cheap version of a thing. And I think it's often better to just bite the bullet and pay the expense as long as you've put an effort into investing, you know, in that expense. Another example is I recently had to get my car repaired, and the inspector dinged it with a bunch of things that I kind of felt like were their opinion and not actually wrong. So I'm not just going to pay for them. I'm going to go to a different mechanic and say, I want to fix these things, but I want to see what the problem with them is. Like, you need, if I'll pay you to fix them all if you show me what is wrong with them. And this guy was great and said, cool, that's fine. And within 30 seconds had jacked the car up, and the steering had a little bit of play, like it wasn't fully responsive, so the tires wiggled a little. You just grabbed the tire and ringed it around, and yeah, like they were loose. And he said, how old's this car? And I said, 10 years. And he said, has the ball joint thing in the steering ever been replaced? And I said, no. And he said, okay, I mean, I'll take it off and show you. There is a good chance that that would benefit from being fixed. Does the steering feel unresponsive to you? I said, a little. He said, let's take a look. And we did. And eventually I agreed that it probably should be fixed. And I felt confident about that expense because I checked as much as you can. You know, I don't know, maybe it would have been fine. Maybe I'll get in a car crash in 6 months and that car will be totaled and that won't have been a good expense. But I can't know that. You know, there's a statute of limitations that probably you, dear listener, are much better at than I am, because I'm crazy and a disasterifier. Disasterification is my middle name. So I worry about such things. You maybe you don't need to. I don't know. But I mean, another example would be like, I put a lot of effort into making my computer really quiet. I spend a lot of my workday sitting in my office in total silence, thinking about video ideas or recording. Having my computer be dead silent while I'm doing that has value to me. I don't think it has value to almost anybody else, but it has value to me. So I went out of my way to get a nice version of the air cooling technology we have nowadays. Yeah, water cooling or a liquid cooled PC is what you think of when you think like really, really cooled, good gaming PC. But you can get an air cooler that is good enough for my needs, and it's pretty nice. It's just silent unless I'm running something really intense. And then yeah, it spikes to being more loud, but that just isn't, I don't care about that. That isn't an issue for my use case. So it was very fulfilling. It's this black box with absolutely no frills. I didn't spend a cent on anything that I'm not using, and it feels great. Like that's such a nice amenity to have. And I come into my office and it just works. Like it's so good. Like that really adds up, having those little things in your life. I think that for a lot of people, and I can completely relate to this, The overall thing about this mindset is that you may believe, listener, that you kind of can't eliminate all those things. I'm here to tell you, you can. I'm not entirely sure that's a good rabbit hole to go down without some caution, having there be a system to get there. And you have to be prepared for like a year or two, I think, like a decent amount of time. But you can remove all that stuff. Like, we humans, we wake up in the morning, we need to eat, shit, and sleep. And those things are not fun unless you make them so. I think it's worth the effort to do that. Like, you can get to the bottom of that problem and then it's just gone. And those things are just gone and they don't have to be there. You don't need to deal with the frustration of those little things in life. I think a lot of people finally feel like you're supposed to just suck it up with those little things. But why? I mean, you're telling me your life is so easy, so trivial, that, oh, but you fancy pants over here doesn't need the energy to get through the other frustrating things in life. Okay, I see how it is. Right. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that would benefit everybody, and it is worth the effort in the medium term to do. I think the best part is that it's not very high maintenance on a day-to-day basis. This is the kind of thing that a normal person would be able to achieve. You don't need to do anything but pace it out, and then the amount you need to do at any given time is trivial. Like, you don't need to do much. Just note things down when they annoy you, note things down when you have a solution in mind. If you come back to it 3 times, it's time to look into it a little and try to find it. Then if you just chip away at that, in a year or two, the friction in life is gone. Gonzo, dunzo, goodbye. I don't need to suffer to exist. I can just be here. And being at peace with things that you don't like, don't worry, you'll come to that too, because you're going to note things down and it's going to be like, I can't do anything about that. I have no idea what to do about that. I don't even have the beginning of a solution to that problem. But knowing what those things are and saying, okay, I know I need to deal with that. I makes me feel better personally. I don't know. Anyway, this is some kind of like nega Buddhism that I'm recommending here. I don't know. That's like inverse Buddhism. Life is a solvable puzzle of suffering. This like sort of anti-Buddhism, like not the opposite of Buddhism, but it's not. Anyway, let's keep going. Eye Patch Notes continues. Not sure if it really counts as mundane. Oh yeah, it was a bad name for the topic, Eye Patch Notes. It's not your fault. I picked up a GameSir X2S. The GameSir. That's a fun name. It's a mobile phone game controller. It's, this, but not in this form factor, split into 2 halves that kind of clamp the phone in between them, making it look a lot like a Nintendo Switch, if you can picture that. This is like one of the main form factors for phone controllers. Yep. For your Fold 4, 2 generations behind, a folding phone game controller, or that you're using with a folding phone. Relative to other phone-minded controllers on the market, the USB-C connector for the GameSir X2S is on the left, a seemingly innocuous change compared to putting the connector on the right. However, any controller that connects from the right will result in a folding phone opening downward toward the player. I think I can picture what you're talking about. This is an awkward angle with the center of mass being biased toward the wrists. In comes the GameSir X2S with its left connector, and lo, it has a Nintendo DS-like form factor in a modular fashion. I never really used Steam Link before picking up this controller, but now I can game from bed or couch like never before. I love this part. The GameSir is recognized as a native controller and plays as such. My daily carry phone is now a portable game console without shelling out money for a dedicated console. Long story short, the physical layout of peripherals matters. For non-folding phones, the connector placement is inconsequential. The phone's gyroscope will compensate. But GameSir seemingly challenged that inconsequence to make a controller that felt just right for players like me. Not sponsored, just the fan. Cool. Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, I think another one of the aspects of this is that a lot of the time, once you get past just, I tried to get a thing that is useful to me, you're doing something a little off-road, I think it would be useful for me to have a controller that fits to my phone. That's not that weird. They sell those. But that's about as far as you can go before the human industry has left you. You're doing enough of a niche thing that you just need to do it yourself. The example I always give, because of course I do, is the bag that I use as a keyboard and typing device. This is a split keyboard, the Keyboardio Model 100, if you must know, on a beanbag with some hardware store parts you can't really see because of the lighting here. These are metal brackets, metal like L-shaped brackets that I just got at the hardware store. And the keyboards, each half of the keyboard comes with these camera mounting clamps on the bottom, so you can screw the thing in. That's a standard size, so you can just go to any hardware store and buy things that will fit with that. Very, very good decision by the people who made the keyboard. That's amazing. You can mount it however the hell you want with very, very little difficulty. And because they chose the camera mounting size, camera mounting equipment, I mean, it's designed so you can mount cameras everywhere. So that was a particularly good choice. It's not only a standard size, it's the standard size of a thing that humanity has already put a lot of effort into letting you place anywhere, just not intended for this use case, but you can still totally use it. Amazing. Like, that's so good. So I've had a few different form factors of this. For a little while, I had it attached to the desk with camera mount clamps that were at perfect right angles, perfect 90-degree tent. So I typed like this. I like this tent a little better. I think it's a little more restful while still keeping my wrists in a more neutral position. Like, rather than having to be like this, they're more like this instead of like this. I'm not really showing it well this way because they have to be down more. Anyway, the arm is at a better position, I think anyway, for me. And the keyboard is otherwise a normal keyboard. I use this for gaming, I use it for typing. And it's on the beanbag, so I can take it on its little cord and plop it on my lap and type like this and just be sitting here laying back and typing with my arms completely neutral. My arms are just at my sides in an almost neutral position, resting on the keyboard. It's awesome for getting to type for long periods of time. And for me, anyway, it has definitely reduced wrist strain in the long run. A big thing with ergonomic keyboards is often just your hand being in a new position initially feels less tiring, but in the long run isn't actually better for your hand. I can tell you that as far as I can tell, this is better for my hands because I've been using this kind of keyboard for a very long time, like almost 10 years in some form. And I've used this setup for 2+ years. And I have way less wrist pain than when I started doing this kind of stuff, especially the typing in the lap thing. That's big. If you might be able to do that comfortably with some normal keyboards, I highly recommend giving that a try. Anyway, the connector for the damn thing. See it there? It took a lot of effort. This is a magnetic data cable with a magnetic data cable receiver butthole thing in a certain kind of L-shaped Turner USB 3 thingy. Let's pull that out. So you can see, take the little butthole out. There it is. And you could just put these in any, USB-C thing. And the pack that I got with them had other connectors as well. So they could connect to a few other types of devices. I think there was a Lightning one for, I think, Apple's products. And then a 9-volt, the trapezoid one. If you do plug stuff, you know what I'm talking about. That trapezoid thing. I forget what that one's called, but that thing. And then this. So you can see this is a female, male, like certain shaped USB Turner thing. Now, why? Why does that matter? Well, because if you plug in the data cable like this, if it were like this, well, you can already see the cable is at a sharp angle and it's a magnet because that makes it easy to take this off and I can put it on all my other setups. My other computer out there has the same magnetic setup. I can move it around very easily and the magnetic cable just means it won't get snagged somewhere. It will just pull out if it gets stuck. I'm waving this thing around. I want that to be like that. But if the cable is at an angle like this, you can see it's just going to come off. Like it would just rip off all the time. It would disconnect. It did disconnect a lot. But like this, I've now turned the angle, I'll put it back together. I've now turned the angle such that it doesn't come out from here, it comes out from here and kind of lays gently along the side of the computer instead. Just with that small change, that this cost me like $3, I just had to think of it and find a product that was the right shape. And for, a pittance, almost non-existent amount of money. Again, I know it adds up, but that's not that unreasonable, I don't think. Now it's just perfect. Like it always works. It's extremely easy to unplug when I need to, but it always stays plugged in when I want it to be plugged in. just delightful, completely seamless. So I completely understand having the form factor matter in smaller ways like that. The point I was gesturing at earlier was this idea that like a lot of the time there might be a way to fix the problem, but for your example, right, who knows why this company made the connector be on the other side? As you said, it kind of doesn't matter for like every other phone except the thing you're trying to do with it. So I mean, it might be that they noticed that, but it would be hard to notice that. One of the insane things about this kind of thing that drives me a bit crazy is how a lot of the time things could be better for like no effort at all. And you can say, well, but it's a cheap one, so they didn't like hire a designer to make it good. And for a lot of the things to which people say that, anybody would notice that it would be better this way. That's not reasonable. But for lots of these things, I don't know. This is an example of one where it's completely reasonable that somebody just wouldn't know that the connector being on that side would be more helpful. Or, that this thing about my split keyboard, right? Obviously, they're not thinking of people using magnetic cable, and it's easy to fix if you do use a magnetic cable. So, of course, they made the plug go out this way instead of out to the side. I'm not sure what would be worse about it going out to the side, but at some mountings it might not fit. I kind of feel like it was a better choice the way they did it, and it just doesn't work well for my use case. But that makes no never mind. Like, how would they have known that? That's what I mean by the sort of bushwhacking element of the subject. There are a lot of little things in life that there just isn't a reason for it to be bad like this. Like, there is something that led to this point, or nothing that led to this point. Like, no one tried to make it a certain way. But for a lot of things, I think it's that you're kind of on your own. You're out there just figuring the thing out for yourself. This can be a little, there's definitely been some steps of this kind of process for me where it's because I was using my parents' Amazon Prime account or whatever, and I could return it for free, that it was okay to need to buy like some pretty obscure objects, and then I got them, saw them in physical space, and then they just clearly weren't what I wanted once I could physically see them, and then I had to return them. But that was fine, and it could easily not be fine. You see what I mean? Which is why I think it's so great to just share these things. Like, there are a good amount of these little things that I feel like it's kind of just like a life starter pack. You just give people these things and boom, life is good. For me, another big one, we're just mentioning a huge amount of them during this parlay, so I hope that's helpful to some people. A huge one for me has been frozen vegetables. In the past, like maybe it was about 10 years ago, it's probably a little more recent for some places, freezing technology for fresh vegetables has become crazy pants, and they have unbelievably good quality. There's like no real reason to buy those vegetables fresh unless you just know you're going to use them immediately. Like frozen peas, that's such an amazing source of nutrition that you could just throw in anything, and you often don't even need to thaw them. You're doing a stir fry, just toss a handful in for like 1 minute at the end. Doing a soup, toss them in without even waiting. They'll cool the soup to a good drinking temperature, eating whatever temperature, and be fully thawed and nicely ready to eat just from doing that. It's so easy. It lets you eat healthy food with so little effort for so little money. And I think that it's just that frozen vegetables have gotten a bad reputation, maybe. I'll tell you, fresh peas taste a lot better than not fresh or overcooked peas. And having them be flash frozen right when they're fresh, right when they're harvested, is a very good way to get that. Another one that is pretty common is broccoli. I feel like there is some texture change, but still good. Riced cauliflower, frozen riced cauliflower, really, really cheap and simple to use, like rice or carb alternative if you want to fit more vegetables into your diet. Just a piece of advice about the riced cauliflower. I think it tastes good with kind of different flavors, so I would experiment a little bit, but it absorbs flavor very readily. Just put seasoning and soy sauce in it, and I think you will find it tastes pretty good. Benefits from being stir-fried, in my opinion. There are lots of vegetables that I don't buy frozen. Cauliflower, for example, normal whole cauliflower, I think it just keeps well enough that you don't have to. You can have it for like a week or two and it can still be kind of okay. If there's black spots on the top, just slice them off. It should only be surface deep. That's fine. Shallots, onions, alliums in general, garlic. Although I do have these frozen garlic cube things that are very nice, but it's mostly so you don't need to peel the individual clove of garlic. Not so much that the garlic would have gone bad, really. Potatoes, not tomatoes. Potatoes can keep fine. Beets, I think, are a really good one. Keep them in the fridge. I keep my beets in the fridge. That seems to work well. Anyway, an old tip is to store them the way the grocery store stores them, but sometimes that's not the best advice. Anyway, stuff like that. Like it's just nice. And it's hard to include good nutrients in your diet. It's hard to include vegetables in your diet, but not if you're told the good ways to do it, basically, is my frustration. And I feel bad for a lot of people, like it for myself in the past. These things are not like people should just be told these things in school, like you could imagine a one semester course that every human could take that would make your life so much better. Just all these little life hacky things that would be universes more valuable than anything you could do with that time, and it would be so easy. Like I try to be consistent with these things so I can tell them to people and offer that as an easy solution, but it's hard to keep track of all of them because there's so many little things. Just looking around my office space, it should be like sort of easy to find some pencil sharpener for chalk, but that's probably obvious to some people. Fidget toys, but it's only if you want a fidget toy. Having a lighter mouse has benefited me a lot. This mouse just has a lot of hollow like bits on it, so it's very light and for me reduces the fatigue on my hand for moving a mouse around a bunch. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but you move it a lot during a day if you work at a computer, so that adds up, and they're often cheaper anyway. This was like 20 bucks or something, and it works great. I even spilled on it and still works great. And it's so light, like it's so much less fatiguing to use. iPatch Notes, you yourself recommended a mouse that is like the clicky buttons are bouncy, so it doesn't create the same impact of hitting against something, because that even hurts to do. Ow. It's more like a trampoline. You kind of bounce off of each of the keys, which my problem is it's loud. For my use case, that doesn't totally work, but for my secondary computer, maybe. And I think for some gaming applications, it's not ideal. But if you do like office work, that's really something worth looking into. That wasn't that expensive, as I recall, that bouncy mouse. And yet I really liked it. It's just loud, and it isn't that good of a fit for gaming, in my opinion. But for the right person, like that would be a really, really good thing. And I think that was only like 35 bucks. I don't really remember. That's good. I think it's worth it for the person that wants it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not on the spot. I think most people, but I am not going to be able to come up with most of the like good ones. But I definitely think there are a lot that there really isn't any reason everybody shouldn't be told, and they help so much for so little. You don't really need to do anything, and they can make things easier, better, more fun in life. I don't know. I had other notes. I guess one of the big ones was just convincing people that there are a lot of these little improvements. I'm not sure that's totally necessary. The note I wrote was, don't assume we live in the best of all possible worlds. In fact, in many ways, I think some things are made in almost the worst possible way. I can certainly think of some video game design that I think is maybe couldn't be worse. But a lot of people think of it that way, right? Like if there's something that would benefit everyone, then we would already know about it. And it's like, okay, but how would we come to know about it? The situation would look the same. We would not know about it. No, there's no reason to assume people have just come up with the best way to do things. There absolutely can be a product that is the same price as another product, and they made a minute change, like the game Sir putting the USB on the other side, and that has absolutely no impact on anything except to make it more useful to some people. That can just be a better way. There can be win-win, have your cake and eat it too scenarios. I think that people kind of don't believe that. Don't you think this is a phenomenon? People have this attitude like there has to be a catch. Not there's usually a catch. Not it would be wise to look for a catch. Like it's not physically possible for there not to be a catch is going too far. Like that it can just be good. It can just be that it's good and there's no reason not to have this. Or there is a reason not to have it, but it's that people don't want to fuss about that thing in their life, but that just, maybe it just isn't worth feeling that way. Like maybe the benefits are enough that you just get the thing, fuss about it for 2 seconds. I don't know. The quote that reminded me of it was people not understanding why the supermarket will sell you something that's wrong, if that makes sense. And it's like, don't people know nowadays? Like, it's kind of insane to me in 2025 that people don't go, oh, but the reason is obviously money. Like they're only motivated by money. Everyone is only motivated by money. Capitalism is broken, and so there's no reason to think this will be good. It's motivated by making money. It will only be good if a way that you can make money motivates them to make it good. And so until proven innocent, it's guilty of being a scam, basically, some kind of grift where it's not really worth the money, but I just might not know how yet. And it might be worth the money, but the people who made it don't care about that. They care about the value of the thing. That's a very cynical approach. I understand that. But it's the much better way to approach things in everyday life. Like it doesn't have to be good. It could just be bad. I don't know. Or, there's lots of different flavors of coffee when you go to the grocery store, but they are almost all exactly the same. But there do exist many different flavors of, or, varieties of coffee. It's just not those. And it's like, okay, so why are those there? You're not telling me that it's just like an illusion and they're all almost the same, but it's just to make the consumer feel like they have a choice. I am absolutely telling you that that is the purpose of that. Like, yes, that's what it is. And I think for a lot of people that just beggars belief in a way. I understand it kind of doesn't feel real, but it's equally fantastical that they just are doing things in your best interest. Like, why? You see what I mean? Why is the grocery store doing something purely for your convenience just to be nice? They might be, but why though? They don't have to do that, and it does cost money. There are some things, sure, but not very many. You know how the items are always in a different place? That's so you notice other things you could buy when walking through the store. Most people go the same route, and so they want items in different places. I don't go the same way most of the time because I'm weird like that. It's not good, but I just don't. And so it's even more confusing. Like, why do you keep moving my stuff? Like, it's to make more money. Of course, it's very inconvenient, but it makes you more money. Or if it isn't inconvenient, you find something new that you like. Great. It doesn't matter. The reason is that they make more money. If it benefits you, that's not a problem, but that's not the point. I don't know. I feel like I don't need to say this. I feel like most people watching this, in my notes I wrote, this is insane to me in 2025. The start and the end of the explanation is capitalism. How do people not know this? But people, like, they do though. I think it's just that it isn't real to them, that it might just be like, there could just be a reason that doesn't have to do with it being good or bad or right or wrong. Like, it just is what it is. I don't know. Personally, I do find it helpful to think a little bit about how things are made. That helps me to conceptualize, like, why would this be expensive or not? For example, I got this as a gift from my partner. I got this keycap. She has a keyboard where you can replace the keycaps, but hasn't really gotten into it that much. You might have noticed from my keyboard from before that not specialty keycaps exactly, but I like customizing my keyboard. I think that's fun to a point. So I got her this little clear resin. It's like a goldfish bowl almost. It's the escape key, but there's like an ocean inside of it, is how it looks. It's pretty. It was expensive. It was like $20+, maybe a little more than that. It was meant to be a beautiful thing that she can have and enjoy when she uses her computer. And I thought about the price for a little bit, and it's like, okay, on the one hand, it's a small thing made of resin. Is that worth $20? Okay, but on the other hand, I mean, it's handmade. Like, they had to like make a diorama, a little mini diorama, and then cover it in resin, and then let it cure and dry and sand it off. And if I did that, I would want to be paid more than $20 for that. I think it's worth $20 personally. You see what I mean? Like, it's not in a sort of value sense. Like, what does it do for $20? But should this cost $20? Like, just as a sanity check. Yeah, I guess, I saw this set of molded dice that have a really different format to them, and they were like $50. Now, they were just resin dice, and they're made from a mold. And so $50, I don't know. I mean, you made the mold and you didn't sell that many. So the making of the setup for them, and then combined with like you do need to do some processing to get them ready to be playable. Okay, that, you know, they're not going to be $10 for a set, but $50, I feel like that's too much. Or you can say, I believe you, maybe seller of this item, that like for the cost you made for the mold, paid for the mold to be made, combined with the small amount you sell, it does need to be $50. But that just isn't a good deal for really anyone, I guess is my point. Or it reminds me of like some coffee grinders, of course I would say that, it's like a niche product. Ironic if you know about the niche grinder. Anyway, I don't think that grinder is an unfair price. But there are some grinders that the price is significantly because they don't sell that many. And it's like, that's fine. I'm not saying they're doing something dishonest, really. But you shouldn't buy that one, though, I don't think. For it to be good value, it needs to be that it's made in a way where it can be sustainable for that amount. I don't know, or it isn't a big expense for something that you don't know is good or you're taking a chance on. I don't know. And indeed, I've been burned plenty of times on smaller things. I got a hand grinder when I first started making good coffee at home, because a hand grinder is going to be cheaper for the same grind quality. They don't have to have a motor in it. It doesn't have to be this big stable thing. It can just be a hand grinder. And this was a really nice quality hand grinder. It made very, very consistent quality coffee grounds, broke the coffee up very evenly without much noise or discomfort. It was, you know, fine to use. Hand grinding coffee is a decent amount of work, don't get me wrong, but, you know, it was like fine. And it was maybe $60, where that grind quality from an electric grinder, I now know, having owned one, would be about twice that, like about $120 or so. So an efficient purchase, you might be thinking. Well, but the problem is, it was so niche of a product, for reasons that kind of escape me, that the people making it hadn't made tutorials on how to use it. It was fixable, but they hadn't made tutorials on how to use it or fix it. And I emailed their support. And they said, yeah, we're working on making a tutorial. And in the time that they sent me that email, they went out of business. That's a real thing. They don't make these anymore. And so, shit, like, it's probably not really broken, but I just don't have a way to know how to fix it. Partly because it was made by a small enough, you know, group of people. So I hate to say it this way. I'm not recommending that people go for the big box, the big producer, for all of their purchasing needs. That mostly no, but I do want to point out that sometimes for something to be a good purchase, it does need to be in a situation more like that, or you need a medium situation. It makes me think about video games a little. Is this related? Really? I mean, we're an hour in, so I'm not certain. It's mattering less and less with every second, so I'm going to tell you this. I think it's related. I think a lot of people are very, they've decided they want the thing. And so they'll put up with whatever is there to get the thing. They'll pay the cost. They'll deal with the frustration. They'll tolerate the inconsiderate tutorials, you know, whatever it is, because they've decided they want the thing. The wanting the thing comes first. But that holds you hostage to a lot of negative experiences that you don't need to put up with if you were just willing to be exacting about the thing that you want. People say, oh, well, I want this type of game, but this genre of this type of game is just kind of doesn't really respect the player's time yet. And so you are going to have to put up with a lot of faffing about to enjoy this game, but you don't have to. Like, game design is a moving target. It will advance to the point where they will realize that is just a waste of the player's time, and we don't need to make them do this. We could just do the tutorials at the beginning of the game better. We can not stonewall the player with a bunch of story, you know, whatever it is. And it's kind of the same with these items too. You know, let's go back to coffee as an example. I would say that making good quality coffee affordably, you know, but the buy-in is affordable. The grinder or whatever is affordable at home was kind of not there 10 years ago, maybe you would say. But now there are cheap enough, good quality enough hand and electric grinders, and we know enough about brewing, and you can buy very, very good brewers for like $10, and specialty coffee is widely available. So you can get it freshly roasted very easily. You can order it online. Those services have become common. The shipping will often be free if you buy a decent amount, and it will get shipped to you 3 days after it was roasted to order specifically for you. Or you could just go to your local coffee shop and buy, they're also a roaster and they roast coffee, and it was roasted a week ago and it's great. For like an okay price, like double the cost of the cheaper coffee, but it is a lot more than double the flavor, and you can consider that a luxury. And it's still less than $1 a cup, and so it's not particularly expensive in the long run. That is now a thing you can do. 10 years ago, to my knowledge, that was not a thing you could do. The coffee would have been just as much harder to find or expensive. The equipment you need to buy in with would be enough more expensive, or you would have enough less of a perspective on the market that you would need to enjoy it much more for it to really be worth the value. Not really a thing a normal person could just go out and grab if they wanted to try it. And importantly, there also weren't ways to just try tasty coffee. We have services like Cometeer nowadays where you can get a perfectly brewed, concentrated coffee ice puck frozen on nitrogen to preserve its flavor, that you could just buy I saw them at the grocery store. You don't even have to order a whole box of them. So for like $10 tops, you can have a almost chemically perfect cup of coffee and say, do I like this? I don't have to wonder if it is how coffee is like good to taste. If I don't like it, I don't have to go, oh, but did the barista just like brew it weird? It can just be like, no, this is how it is supposed to taste. Use distilled water is a chemically perfect cup of coffee. That is a possible thing now. It's not completely perfect, but we can do that now, And so that buy-in is kind of there where it sort of wasn't before. Like, I'm not sure that's a good idea, but there at least is a path to get there. You see what I'm trying to say? So there are some things for which it's like, that might be a matter of research. Like maybe it was possible 10 years ago, but you needed to do more digging to find where it was. But I guess my point is that I'm not sure that is worth it, if that makes sense. Why does it have to be just that thing? Why does it have to be coffee? It doesn't, at least as far as I'm concerned. Just drink tea instead. You don't need to do all of that faffing about. You could just buy good quality tea and drink it right now. And for $10 and some patience, as it ships from China, where most of the good tea is grown, you will have delicious tea. That's it. Obviously do that instead, is how I feel. But for a lot of people, do you see what I'm trying to say? Like the thing that they want is locked in before, like, what do you have to compromise pretty much to get that thing? And I think for me, that is the root of a lot of these problems, is that people are kind of have died on the hill of this is the thing that I want before hearing like, but what do you have to do that? I don't know. And in a perfect world, like in a video game, it would be that these things are just equal. You don't, the buy-in is the same. If you pick this class, you don't have to do way more of a quest to like get your abilities than this other class, unless it says so on the tin. And then oh, this is what I'm getting into. You do not know what you are getting into in life. And I'm very sensitive to that. That's a huge concern. At the same time, I feel like for the insider in the subject, the answer is often very simple. It reminds me of maybe plumbing is a good profession for this. If you've done any amateur plumbing, you may know that a lot of the things that you would want to do to your shower or toilet or sink at your home, how you do them is very, very easy. It's very straightforward to do. This is not true of everything in plumbing, but there's lots of things like that. But finding that thing is very obscure. Finding it is hard, but if someone just told you, you could do it in 2 seconds. It's like that. Or it reminds me of programming a little bit too. There's a lot of these things where it's like you just have to be good at Googling stuff. It's not hard to do the thing you want to do. What's hard is knowing how to do the thing you want to, like finding how to do the thing you want to do. But if you find it, then you're good. Now, just to be clear, this is not to say that plumbers or programmers are unskilled. Quite the opposite. They have the most important skill. They have the hardest jobs, which is finding that stuff or cataloging that stuff in a useful way. I have a lot of, I am perhaps trying to mimic that ability in my own life. I have the opposite of a lack of respect for those professions. I hope that's clear. To say, oh, it's easy once you know how, it's not derisive. Like, that is not to say it's easy. It's to say that that's the whole problem. There are other professions where how you do this is straightforward. It's just a lot of work. You can just go do it now, and a master craftsperson will do it faster and better than you will. But you can absolutely just go do this, and it's fine, and you'll be done. You know, knitting is maybe an example. You can go knit a scarf, but there's a lot of skill involved in knitting a scarf. There's a different kind of challenge involved in like the plumbing, the programming in my contrived example. It's not like all plumbing and all programming are like that. You get the point. And I personally feel like that is the more useful version. Like finding a way to get the answer is the useful thing. And the answer I have for you is Reddit. So hilariously often, if you search like specific thing I want to know, Reddit, and then click, you will be brought directly to an ultra specific thread where someone is complaining about that exact thing and has solved it. I was annoyed by my keys jingling the other week. And I was being a bit of an idiot because you could just take stuff off of the keyring that I don't need, and that's what I did. But I was going a bit crazy, and I thought, I need to put like a silencer on the keys. Like, no, you really, really don't. But I was possessed. And so I typed in, how do I make my keys quiet? Click. And there was a bunch of people saying, oh, just, it doesn't matter that your keys are loud, shut up. And I went, okay, but I just, fuck it. I don't care, just give me a solution. Reddit, boom. And then immediately I got like 5 results that were all, put this like plastic O-ring on your keys to make them not touch when they're jingling in your pocket. Or like, why do people keep their key ring on the outside of their, whatever. I used some shrink wrap rubber to like make a little condom for my key that makes it not make noise. Like, what? Suddenly we're too deep. I was back up. And it was great. I had my answer in seconds. Wait, I don't need to do this much. I could just reduce the amount of keys I have. The big thing was it was a sanity check for me, and I saw people just have way too many keys, or they need to have too many keys, whatever, but I don't. I could just take them off, and I did, and now it's fine. I don't know why I was being silly about that, but it helped. You see what I mean? Reddit being so like blinders on to other circumstances around you is perfect for this kind of thing, because that's what you often want. You want someone to have gone deep on the thing and just grabbing that person. Let me just talk to you for a sec. Okay, good, goodbye. Like it's amazing. Like that's so good. So that, joining a specific Discord, I wish it was searchable, that kind of thing too. But it's great to kind of dive into those little places and pick a thing out and then come back out. This is something I want to do in videos more too, like the ability to just go really deep into a subject and then we back out. It's kind of a nice thing about Parley. I'm sort of doing that with the Build Brewery streams, the stream archives that go on the Bootleg Builds channel that are like a time-stamped 3.5 hour stream of us just labbing out a build. On the stream, it's kind of meant to be, we just go all the way and then you're out. This is the whole rabbit hole. Here you go. You go in when you're ready, And I would like to make more of that kind of thing. I think that's fun and valuable in a way. It's weird because it doesn't seem time efficient, but I think it really is when you need to know the topic or you've decided you want to know the topic. So yeah, that's interesting. I wish I had a bunch more little things. I've been meaning to make a list of what are all the little things that you did, but now they're just there behaving themselves, and so you don't notice. I will try to lightning round you a bunch of things. There are these cleaning tablets for like clothes washing machines. They're like little, baking soda and a few other like basic detergent chemicals that you just yeet one into your washer every few months. That's how often I do it anyway, and clean it out. If you combine that with getting a shower curtain that is washable, wash the shower curtain, throw a tablet in to keep it nice and squeaky clean, and then run your clothes in again. Cleaner than it would have been before, and you don't have to wash or replace your shower curtain anymore. It won't get gross. I put a little bit of bleach on the shower curtain, and then as it washes, that usually works itself out. That's amazing. Has been a huge game changer that makes that gross part of showers so nice. The shower is crispy clean for almost zero effort, and I'm sure the washing machine is cleaner for my clothes than it would have been otherwise. Great. That adds so much for so little. Wadding up old socks but clean old socks, and using them as dryer balls to break up your clothes in the dryer. If you have the like a tumbling dryer and big enough things, this can open up room for air to get in a way that will meaningfully faster dry your clothes. Just try it both ways and compare. If it doesn't work, it might be the things you're drying or your dryer. It might not work, but it's basically free. You'll have socks around. Why not try it? That's a simple one. Frozen vegetables, I didn't mention a thing that I think is really good, which is frozen mushrooms. If frozen mushrooms can be really nice because mushrooms go bad really fast, but mushrooms are also very resilient to being overcooked and like texture problems. So even though the flash freezing is really good, I mean, any loss in quality you would have gotten from them being frozen, mushrooms can be quite resilient to that. So far that's been working really well for me. Mushrooms in general, like there's a lot of faffing about with how you cook the mushrooms, but keep at it a little bit. The bag of frozen mushrooms won't be that expensive and won't go bad, so you can experiment with it for a good amount of time. At the very least, chucking a few in a soup, just like that pea thing, the frozen peas thing from before, great. And again, very little effort for a lot of nutrition. Canned goods. This is a huge undersung food thing. If you make any food at home at all, you don't think of it as cooking. You make cup ramen at home. Get canned foods. Hell yes. Like that's so good. It's such a treasure trove of easy, delicious food. Because canning, it sounds bad to a lot of people. I know some people have a bias against canning. I'm here for the canning bias. I get it. But a lot of foods, it's like, okay, you put it in a can, you packed all the flavor into a concentrated place. So it's delicious. I had these parsley and cumin chickpeas in a can last night for dinner. I just made rice and dumped the can in, juice and all, and it was amazing. They were so flavorful. It was so easy to do. It was like one of the better meals I've had all year, and it was like almost zero effort. I just ran the rice cooker and dumped a can in, and it was amazing, and stirred, and it was amazing. It could have done with more salt. I put some soy sauce in. Great. Even just simple things like having a can of black beans, drain it. I give them a rinse, and you don't have to, but I do. And then put that in your rice and dump a bunch of seasoning in. Like, it's dead easy, weeknight meal to have. Recently, I've been eating these lupini beans. They're like lightly pickled, edamame-esque things that you could just dump on top of a salad, or like, I don't eat salads at all. So on top of your rice thing, or into a sandwich, like a breakfast sandwich, or like a big deli sandwich or something. Sometimes I just eat them with some almonds or whatever. You got your fiber, you got your satiating protein. Super easy to maintain. They do spoil, but they keep for like 3 weeks in the fridge, so it's not much of a rush. That's great. Just having nuts on hand, that's good. For me, it's like alkaline foods too. I like a lot of acidic food, so having some foods like nuts or milk, I guess, that just make your stomach less acidic, it helps a lot. Just being able to mix your diet like that can be nice. There's a type of food that gives you heartburn. This might not work, but just try it and see if it helps. That's great. Tea resin. I brought this up. Let's go get. Should we go get tea resin? We'll time stop. These little guys that let you just have a really well brewed cup of tea. It's like the instant coffee of the tea world. These are super cheap for really good quality. Instant coffee, it can be really cheap, but it's not very tasty by itself. And I know a lot of people are using it to make like Dalgona coffee or a latte or something, like a milk drink. That's fine and all. It is very nice for travel to have it be that you, not only is it wrapped by itself, it's more concentrated, right? It also is meant to taste good as a drink by itself. You're not meant to need to put anything in. So I think it matters that a product like this tastes like a certain minimum amount of tasty, if that makes sense, by itself. And these are so cheap. For the better quality ones can taste better, but I mean, even those, it's like $1 max, and I think these were like in the 30 cents each price range. So you can buy, I mean, I've got a whole bowl of them. And when people need something for the road, or like just someone comes over, you just take a few and you got a snack ready to go. Basically infinite supply for, like $10. And I've had this for like half a year, and I'm still like only a third of the way through. It's great. Or if you drink caffeine sometimes and you realize you have not had caffeine in a day, you will get the caffeine withdrawal symptoms. This is one of the annoying things about caffeine. In coffee, you can just have decaf, but tea, it's not as easy. Well, you can effortlessly have a tasty serving of tea for a negligible amount of time. Just put some water on it and chuck this in. That's nice, and you get a great drink on top of it. That's helpful. Oh boy, what else? Are we still going? I think we're still. I'm just gonna keep going. It's fine. Walking treadmill. Taking a walk outside is really, really good for your health. I hope this is uncontroversial, but the weather, where I live anyway, is a complete asshole and just changes on a dime. You can, for a medium price, like in the single or double hundreds of dollars price range. I've got one on sale for $100. It's pretty good. You can get a treadmill that's just walking. It's just a board that is you can walk. Watch anime on the TV while walking on your walking treadmill. Download an audiobook and listen to that while you're on your walking treadmill. Talk with your partner while hanging out on the walking treadmill or whatever it is. It's nice and it's not that aerobic. You can still kind of just do stuff, but you can get movement in and get the basic human brain balancing activity of moving your body in between activities where you move your mind. And I find this to be a gigantic quality of life upgrade. I previously would have recommended a recumbent bike, and I think that's not a bad choice for a lot of people, but being able to have it be that you stand up, it's a big difference. I mean, I'm not sure for most people that I would really recommend a standing desk. I think for a lot of people, it's enough of an expense, like it's enough more expensive for enough of a modest enough benefit that it probably isn't worth it before a lot of other things, like the walking treadmill, for example, though one could combine them. Anyway, not for now. But still, I think it makes a big difference to be able to just kinesthetically stand up, or like you can do a lot more just like basic stretching and exercises from a standing position than from sitting. I think that adds up. I've been using that for like 6 months or so now, and I'm noticing a significant difference. Like my body is warmer, my circulation is a little better than it was. I feel just a little bit like more hale, hearty, healthier. And it didn't really do anything to my free time. Like when I would be watching a show, I just walk for 15 minutes, and then if I want to, I stop, and it's fine. I got some movement in. I still go for hikes in the woods. I live on a property where there's a hiking trail right off of it, and I think that's great. Go find those. They're fun and they're often free. A lot of places in the northeastern US are really known for their free hiking places, but I know a lot of my audience doesn't even live in the United States, so I don't know, find your local area. But hiking is a huge resource in the world that you could just go and walk places and it's great. That's very nice, but it's nice to be able to be consistent without needing to want to go outside, is the point I'm trying to make. You can do it consistently, just where you walk might change, and you can make one of those places be inside. Again, to me, I know for some people a more aerobic option would be better, like a running treadmill or a recumbent bike or something. I just want to recommend the walking treadmill because I had somehow not thought of that, and I think it fits my needs better. I think the ability to have it kind of not be a workout, but you can just get movement in, would be useful to a lot of people. On the other hand, a really popular thing is the recumbent bike, and you sit down and play video games while doing it because you're sitting. So even though you're exercising pretty intensely, you're like running kind of, or you're bicycling, it's comfortable enough that you can like play a game, especially on a controller, really, really easily, pretty actively while doing that. So that also, that gets a recommendation for me as well. That's cool. I was doing that for a while. This apartment, we don't have a good space for that. In the future, when I own property, eventually, looks nervously at housing market and bank account, I will absolutely be doing that again. And certainly if you think you have the space, yeah, do that. Like, hell yeah, that's awesome. What else do we have? Yeah, that might be a lot of it for now, but I mean, I'm sure I could come up with like 50 other things. If you work in a computer a lot and your hands get cold, I highly recommend getting fingerless gloves to keep your hands warmer. Keeping your muscles warmer like that will help them recover more, will make it hurt your hands less. Will keep them cozy, will keep your muscles more relaxed. Talk to your doctor, but it's helped me a lot, and it's a pittance to acquire such a thing. Like, just get some fingerless gloves. If you This is just wrist health stuff. If you have to drive decent distances, it's nice to have wrist braces. and just wear them when you drive for a decent distance. It helps keep your wrist braced. That's the whole point. I can't believe I just said that. You know what I mean? Reinforce holding the wheel in place, which really adds up. Like that hurts your body. That is a strain. And this is a really helpful place for it. It's kind of annoying for things like video games. Sometimes it's sort of in the way, but this is a great case where you can wear these actively, and that really helps. There are some times where people wear them passively. They'll rest and put their wrist braces on. That's great. But also some active activities, I also feel like it helps a lot personally. Ugh, the fact that I have all these things just to hand is a great ad for them being useful, I think. So I hope there was something in there for people. I feel bad because the moment I end this stream, I'm instantly going to think of like 20 more things. But of course, it's just endless. The point is just to say that there are these little bits in the world that I think can be very helpful. And this idea that I was watching this video recently about the meat industry in the United States and how for a lot of the conditions for the animals living in the meat industry, living is a harsh word for it, lower quality meat in the US, a lot of the living conditions, it's like for about 2% more money, it could be like 50% better. There is no reason for it not to be like that, except that the current industry is built on very thin margins, but only because people because it is that cheap now, because people expect it to be that cheap. It got to this point, so now there's a reason it is still this way, but we didn't need to get to this point. I mean, we did and we didn't. You get the point. But nothing would really be lost in societal value if you just wiped everybody's memory and made the meat 2% more expensive, and then the animals had the 50% better quality of life. It would taste better, it would be healthier. It's a better thing to do to our animal companions in the world. You don't have to care about animals that much for it to just be like, they don't have to, bad things don't have to happen to them, so why? And nobody would ever notice. It would not be meaningful to increase people's prices for, a steak that is already a splurge by 2%. Like that just isn't, that's not a problem. That's okay. If you're worried about people having enough money to eat, I don't think a 2% increase on a relative luxury product is that much of an issue. Again, we're open to a peer-reviewed study here, but it's stuff like that, like just to feel skeptical that this doesn't need to be the way it is. You don't deserve anything. We're all just dust in the wind. There is no deserve, but I don't know, like as a human being where you eat, sleep, and shit to keep yourself going in the world, why not have things just not be a pain? I don't know, like be annoying. And you can assign that effort elsewhere. Like you can offload those little sufferings in life, can add up, and you could do whole other things with your life. Got a secondary goal in your life you've wanted to fulfill? It's entirely possible that if you remove all the little aches and pains in the world, you might do it where you wouldn't have before. You'll write the book you want to write, or learn to skateboard or something, play the saxophone as you've always wanted to. I don't know your life, because these things are out of the way. Obviously, the reason I care about this is because I have lost my mind and I want to do everything at all times. But I don't know, I found time to waffle about this for an hour and 20 minutes, so you can too. What exactly is the takeaway here? I don't know. It's a lot of effort. It's not a lot of effort. We shouldn't act like that. But just to say, there's certainly no reason it can't be better than it is. And these kind of small changes that add up, is just really noticeable. Like it feels really great to live in a space, even just this crappy apartment, to live in a space that serves me. It's there to do the things I want done well. My world is designed for me, not for some sterile, generic human, but for me specifically, for my needs. I bet a lot of the things I said were amenities. You all went, why would anyone ever need that? Like, that's great. Like, think that, please. And make it your own. That's all. Was this encouraging? Did I do good? I think you did good, iPatch Notes and Mr. Foot. Thank you for the responses. Folks, there's a crew parlay up for March. So if you have my $5 tier, you can go respond to that. I'd love to have your response. This one is about janky game mechanics. I just wanted to say again that this tier is available to a lot of people. If you are a Twitch Prime sub, or you're gifted a Twitch sub, or you pay for a Twitch sub on my Twitch channel, or you support me at the $5 tier on Patreon, I treat those as the same thing. I don't get paid the same for those, but I give you the same thing for those. You could do YouTube too, the $5 tier on YouTube. Those all, if you have your Discord account and that account synced, give you access to this tier. So use it if you like. I would love to hear your response. I think that these are, I don't want to panic people. It's okay if there aren't a ton of responses. I think these were less populated because my January and February were very bumpy. I had a very rough start to this year. I got COVID at the beginning of the year. I was quieter releasing videos for the beginning of the year. So I don't think it's weird that these have a lower amount of responses than normal. That's okay. Like that's fine. Don't feel like you have to. I just want to make sure people who would like to use it can. You know, it's a free thing that the largest group of the people that support me for a living have. So I just want to make sure you use it if you want to. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you had a good time. Hope you found something useful. If you have little things like this, tell me them at any given moment during a stream or wherever. I love them, and I want all of them to be for everyone a starter kit to make the world better for yourself. Maybe a little bit more like an intermediate exercise. See you in the next one.